So what's the deal with watch fairs? Is it worth going to one? Well, I just came back from Windup in New York. I came away with 4 watches that I really felt like stood out. I've got a salmon dial moon phase, a big colorful diver from California, a really economical daily driver from Timex, and this very unique square dress watch. So let's talk about them. Guys, if you love watches but hate social media, you have got to get on the Watch Crunch app. We built this thing for free from the ground up for watch nerds like you and I to have a modern place to talk watches without all the noise. So come check it out. Maen is a bit of a weird name for a watch brand. These vowels don't seem like they really belong together unless you're, say, the offspring of a Musk. Come to find out though, Maen is actually an old Dutch word for the moon, which is only fitting for this mechanical moon phase called the Lunar Classic. Right out of the box, I knew that this was the best watch that Maen has made so far. Now, I know that's a bit of a subjective statement, but I've seen most of the stuff coming out of the microbrand world, and this just feels a step above it. Why? Well, I like to talk about this idea of the complete watch. So there's a lot of great watches out there, great designs, good finishing, but you kind of have to nail every category, including, say, the bracelet, the movement choice, etc., to be considered complete in my book. This moon phase is a complete watch as far as I can tell. I picked the salmon dial for that traditional Gilded Age aesthetic. The rich copper color has a brush finish that is so sweet in the light. It's got a lot of intricate details too, with the silver track outboards with radio graining. The hands and markers are actually polished gunmetal color for contrast. And of course, you get that big moon phase at the 6. The watch case is also unique with flat, planar lugs that remind me of the Grand Seiko 44 GS case from the 70s. This gives this 36mm size plenty of wrist presence. There is a boxed sapphire that has heaps of AR to keep the crystal super clear. And with the height of only 11mm, it wears really easy under any cuff. So a place that most small brands fall flat is the bracelet. I just think there's probably a few factories that just stamp out standard bracelets and clasps. You can just kind of mix and match and buy them hundreds at a time. So in that sea of monotony, the Maen's fine link bracelet really stands out. It reminds me of something from like a vintage gold Patek. Each link is small and flat and fit into each other with no gaps, so the whole thing just kind of drapes over your wrist, almost like cloth. The butterfly deployant hides itself to let the bracelet kind of flow around your wrist. It ships with a Sellita SW200, starts at about $1,000. I'm really struggling to find any faults with this thing. I mean, I think if you're looking for a dressier watch that is not boring at all, this has got to be the top of your list now. So it's the weekend and you're ready to get out of the house. Well, think about grabbing this Vaer D5 Pacific for a spin. Vaer is one of these brands that's really stepped up their design game. If you've met the founders, they're a bunch of SoCal surfer dudes with like sand falling out of their hair. So this bold diver is right on brand for them. The Pacific comes in 2 colorways. There is the Malibu, which is kind of like a Barbie color, and this earthier Anacapa, which I have here. There is some really interesting use of color here. 2 shades of green play off of each other on both the bezel and the dial. And on that dial, we get sword hands and a lollipop second hand. There is a date wheel at the 6 with an Easter egg of alternating colors between orange and green. And one thing I noticed is that the minute track doesn't perfectly line up at the 12, which most people probably won't even notice, but kind of triggered my OCD, so I had to mention it. Otherwise, the proportions of this case is just about perfect for a sports watch. It's 39mm wide, 13.7 thick, which includes a domed sapphire. I love the detail of this twisted lug, almost like the Omega Speedmaster. They keep the lug-to-lug manageable at 46. The finishing is also superb, and the bezel action is one of the best, most satisfying I've met. This watch is just pure fun. It makes me want to learn surfing or something. So the D1 Pacific starts at around $700. It runs a Miyota 9015, which is their higher end 3-hand movement, and can be optioned with a variety of straps or bracelet. Is it just me, or is Timex on a bit of a tear right now? They just seem to keep releasing bangers left and right. So when I saw this Marlin for $299, I had to jump on it. In some ways, I feel like Seiko has moved up market and Timex has picked up the slack at the sub $500 level. This is listed at $299, but you can get a 10% discount on their website, which is just crazy for a mechanical watch from a century-old brand. The Marlin feels like a perfect day. Holy, there are these crazy ass clouds outside and it just keeps shifting. The joys of working with natural light. Okay, we're switching to artificial. This Marlin feels like the perfect daily driver. Classic enough in design to be inoffensive, but visually interesting enough to keep you engaged. The flat black dial features Arabic numerals with a bit of a military vibe with that railroad track around it. There are long stick hands, but the focal point has got to be that sub-dial at the 9. It really took me a while to figure out what it does, but it looks like a 24-hour tracker, so separate AM from PM, which really seems kind of useless on this style of a watch. I mean, nobody is going spelunking with it, but who cares? It just looks cool with the radial graining that really reflects the light well. The case is also pretty interesting. It's 39 millimeters and tonneau shaped with long sweeping brushed chamfers cut into their sides. It's 14 millimeters thick, but a lot of that is a high domed acrylic crystal. So it wears more like a 12.5. The really crazy part is that this thing runs an automatic mechanical movement. I can't tell you much about it, but you can see it through a porthole on the case back, which at this price point, you really be expecting quartz. So what's the catch? Well, there is a major Achilles heel with this watch, and that is the bracelet. I mean, I actually don't mind the 5-link design with a mix of polish and brushing. It's pretty solid also, it doesn't jangle too much. The problem is that the clasp has no micro adjustments, and we don't even get like a half link in the box. And given the size of the link, it's a total crapshoot on fit. If your wrist size happens to fall on a full link, then you're in luck. But if you're like me, the bracelet is either too tight or if I add a link, too loose. What a shame. Definitely the most unique watch of the bunch is this Ecco Neutra Rivanera. If you're used to this company giving us racing-inspired chronographs, this one really came out of the left field. Now, there's a reason smaller brands tend to focus on sports watches, because they sell. To do a rectangular dress watch, especially one with such interesting features, that's pretty daring. The Rivanera is like the black swan in a sea of sports watches. It's got a fully grade 5 titanium case, giving its sandblasted finish a dark and stormy vibe. I've got the gray dial here, there's also the black, but the key feature is a Breguet hour hand and elongated polished black hour markers, giving the whole thing very sort of gothic persona. They really paid attention to the small details here with a sharply cut and polished step that runs along the edges of the case. This is echoed by a 45-degree bevel at the edge of the flat sapphire glass, both reflecting light as you move the watch about. The case measures 27 millimeters wide and 40 millimeters long, but retains 20 millimeter lug widths to accommodate a variety of straps. Mine came on this black shell cordovan, which looks really well made, probably will last for years. Now, turning the watch over, we see a round window showing off the Sellita 7001 manual wound movement. This allows the case to stay impossibly thin at 5.9 millimeters, making the watch feel extra refined and highly engineered. One drawback is that there's only 30 meters water resistance, but I doubt you're jumping in the pool with this. I've also noticed that the sharp corners of the watch can sometimes catch my sleeve. But hey, that's the price you pay for avant-garde design. Design that I really wasn't expecting from a small brand. Definitely not a design that's gonna have, say, mass appeal, but if you live in a stone castle and don't much fancy garlic, then maybe you'd prefer this over a Cartier. All right, folks, that's my haul from the watch fair. Let me know which one stood out to you. Have you been to a watch fair? Do you have aspirations of going to one? Get on the WatchCrunch app and let's have a deeper conversation about these watches. Take care.